Morning, everyone. I came across this and I had to verify it. I don't know whose social media this was, but I came across it. It says, just so everyone knows, the police are pulling over all cars on the ramps to the QEW in Oakville. They're asking everyone where they're going and warning them that they'll be handing out fines starting tomorrow. For anyone out with more than one person in their car and anyone going somewhere other than essential trips, i.e. groceries, or bringing things to people who can't leave their houses, stay the F home. And there's an attachment of an OntarioCourts.ca Court of Justice, and it's got fines here. And I like to show sources, so here's that link. And it's interesting, right? Ontario Court of Justice, Schedule 401. It is ordered on this 18th day of March 2020. Today is the 30th of March, excuse me. It is ordered pursuant to the provisions of the Provincial Offences Act and the rules for the Ontario Court of Justice that the amount set opposite each of these offences in the attached items of Schedule 4.0.1 under the provincial statuses and regulations thereunder is the set fine. The order comes into effect on the 18th day of March, dated at Toronto, 18th day of March, and it says failure to comply with order made during a declared emergency, $750. Obstruct any person exercising a power in accordance with an order made during a declared emergency, $1,000. Obstruct any person performing a duty in accordance with an order made during a declared emergency, $1,000. So that's interesting. Here's the OPP, because when you come across an image like this on Facebook or on Reddit or wherever you find these things, you've got to verify, right? Like, has travel been shut down in Ontario? Because the other day I reported on Quebec shutting travel, non-essential, between regions. And so they've set up checkpoints in Tamascasing and between Ontario and Quebec and between regions within Quebec. So they're doing this there. I didn't realize they were doing it in Ontario too. But yeah, the OPP are saying stay home. And here's Guelph OPP. This was tweeted on March 26th. Go home and hashtag stay home, essential travel only. If you are returning home from abroad, go directly home. Stopping along the way and getting out to go shopping or picking up food defeats the purpose of self-isolation. And this is just an officer talking about the rest stop and how here he is.
The many en-route service plazas that are scattered all across the province. And with the COVID-19 crisis that's ongoing right now, they look a little different. The tables are put away, the chairs are gone, and really the crowds are absent. Typically, this is a busy place with people coming and going, getting food, getting refreshed, and getting gas. But today, that's certainly different, and that's what it's been like for the last little while. Again, essential travel only. If you have to be out on the roads, you're allowed to travel. But again, we don't want people putting themselves and the rest of the public at risk. Take all the precautions that you are encouraged to do so. Self-isolate if you have to. Keep your social distance and your physical distance from others, and just be careful wherever you are. Please stay home. These facilities are here, but they're only here right now for those that absolutely have to be out on the highways. Take care of yourself, and we'll be in touch.
So that's the OPP, and here's a Narcity article. This is the only article I could find about this, by the way. There's non-essential businesses ordered to be closed, right? I just want to show you that that's non-essential businesses. I thought, here's the non-essential travel news, but this is a little bit more pernicious than this, okay? So this is non-essential businesses closed after spike in coronavirus totals, but I was looking for non-essential travel in Ontario, right? And there's not much other than this Narcity article. That's the only thing. It's the only thing that comes up, right? So, and maybe I'm not good at Googling. That is certainly a possibility, but I'll read you this article, and I think it's bigger news than this, because it's verified as well by the Canada.ca health website, right? Like here's right, COVID disease travel advice for Canadians who have not traveled outside of the country. That's you and me, mostly. Okay, but first here, OPP is warning all residents to avoid non-essential travel. The OPP came out with a public service announcement on Thursday morning to tell residents to stay indoors as much as possible. COVID-19 in Ontario is still continuing to spread across the province, and Sergeant Kerry Schmidt is now warning all residents to avoid non-essential travel. Residents should only be leaving their house when absolutely necessary, warns the OPP. In a tweet from an empty en-route service plaza, Sergeant Kerry Schmidt warned residents of new social distancing rules that have been set in place across the province. Go home and stay home. Essential travel only, said the tweet. If you're returning home from abroad, go directly home. Stopping along the way and getting out to go shopping or picking up food defeats the purpose of self-isolation. However, that doesn't mean you can't leave your house at all. Schmidt states that you have to be out on the roads, whether it be for work or food, you're still allowed to travel. Essential travel only. If you have to be out on the roads, you're allowed to travel. But again, we don't want people putting themselves and the rest of the public at risk, he states. This announcement from the OPP comes after Canada enacted mandatory isolation measures via the Quarantine Act for those who are returning to the country from abroad. Right, those who are returning to the country from abroad, not people living here now, but it apparently applies. Back to this. The self-isolation period lasts for 14 days and could come with jail time and fines for those who do not comply. Even people who are just self-monitoring, which is when you have no symptoms, are being asked to avoid crowded places. There are no crowded places right now. And to increase their personal space from others whenever possible. In Ontario, people who fail to comply with social distancing protocols can now be fined up to $1,000. Right? Here it is. You see? You're not complying with an order. $1,000 fine. Thank you. The province is still in a state of emergency, which has resulted in multiple businesses and venues closing their doors for the time being. Schools, national parks, and playgrounds are also shutting down across the province as the government continues to urge everyone to social distance as much as possible. Here is for all Canadians who have not traveled outside of the country, that's you and me. Stay at home as much as possible. All Canadians should be practicing social physical distancing. Even if you don't have symptoms of COVID-19, you could become infected by others. Stay at home unless you have to go to work. Talk to your employer about working from home if possible. Avoid all non-essential trips in your community. Really? Like, that's a headline, right? Isn't it? If it's going to be enforced by fines, that's a headline. Do not gather in groups. Limit contact with people at a higher risk, e.g. older adults and those in poor health. Go outside to exercise, but stay close to home. Yesterday, I drove, and I have a toddler. I have a young child, 4. I guess he's just a bit older than a toddler, but his legs are short, so I can't go a far distance with him walking, and taking the stroller's not great with a 4-year-old boy, right? They don't want to be in the stroller most of the time. So we drove to another place, and there was a municipal, like a municipal officer, a bylaw officer, who slowed the car down to a crawl and was like mean mugging us. And I ignored it. I was like, all right, whatever, man. But this would be the reason why they did that. And I didn't realize that this is the reason they did that. But yeah, so it looks like, unless it's essential, stay home, don't go to the park, and don't drive to a close park that you maybe want to walk around because it's a little different than the parks that you can walk to with the limits of a 4-year-old's legs or bike or whatever, right? So really, I mean, it's interesting because this is more restrictive, I think, than people were expecting. Certainly more than I was expecting. Back to this. If you leave your home, always keep a distance of at least 2 arms length, approximately 2 meters from others. Household contacts, people you live with, do not need to distance from each other unless they're sick or have traveled in the last 14 days. You can go for a walk if you have not been diagnosed with COVID-19, do not have symptoms of COVID-19, have not traveled outside Canada in the past 14 days. If you go for a walk, do not congregate and always practice physical social distancing by keeping at least 2 meters apart from others at all times. Right? Isn't that interesting? And this is just a reminder. Yesterday, I talked about the Quebec thing, and they're putting limits. Here's limits on travel between regions, including Ontario. There's a border now in Tamascasing. And here's Halton Regional Police for Milton and Halton Hills, and they say parking in this way to trespass into closed Halton conservation parks will result in parking tickets and trespassing charges. We know times are tough right now, but this is unacceptable. You know what's interesting? I think that potentially these shouldn't be closed. These should be open for everybody to use. We know how to social distance. I know how to go to the park and keep my family safe and keep my kids close to me. My kids understand we can't go play on the playgrounds, and they understand they need to stay close to me when we're outside or whatever. If we're going for a walk, they don't go and play with other people, etc., other groups, to pay attention to these rules that are in place that have teeth, apparently, right? So I think it's offensive for all of these parks that are paid for by taxpayer dollars to be closed and force people to park like this. You know, like, I think they should have parking and have parking that's blocked off one space between to encourage their use, because this is a good way to utilize our taxpayer funded park spaces in a positive way, unless there's something they're not telling us about this virus. Right? I mean, it seems draconian. Yeah, you can go for a walk, but don't get in your car and go to a park. That's terrible. You will be spreading the virus. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this is that contagious, but as What else is that contagious? Like, are you not allowed to drive around with people who've got the measles? I hear the measles is 10 times more contagious than the flu, or something to that effect. It's very contagious when you compare it to the flu, apparently. And so my question is, at what point do the crackdown on freedoms become intolerable? I think we're nearing that point. And I think they're just getting started. Really, I think, man, this is a dangerous powder keg to play with. It really is, and I don't think they're doing this right. I think they could do this better, much better. It doesn't need to be this draconian. Why are they going in that direction? Why is everyone enthusiastically going in that direction? Here's global news, and this headline shocked me. The measures being taken to try to slow the spread of the new coronavirus, Chinese Wuhan flu coronavirus, has severely impacted. That demonetized my video. I don't care. I'm just saying that'll do it. Anyway, the spread of the new coronavirus has severely impacted the national economy, resulting in staggering job losses. Talking about this also demonetizes the video. Okay, so don't worry about it. Global news, details of wage subsidy program expected today as coronavirus continues to spread. Okay, and the point here is at least global news is admitting that these new measures are having an unbelievable impact on the economy. Like, this has been happening for less than 2 weeks, and we're looking at $200 billion in stimulus. $200 billion, that is a lot of money. And the stimulus is going to be rolled out to people who most need it, et cetera. But there's always going to be complaints. There's always going to be ripe for the picking for division, right? When you give tax breaks, usually what happens is somebody says, oh, the rich are benefiting more from this tax break. And well, when they talk about the rich benefiting, it's because they have more tax brackets that they're in, so they get more money back from the taxes, right? So, I mean, there's all sorts of ways to exploit that kind of stuff. But anyway, here's the article. And Global News details, I already read that. When the federal government announced on Friday that it was boosting the subsidy to 75% from the original 10%, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said he hoped the details would be hammered out by Monday for the proposed wage subsidy program. The unprecedented measure began being taken to try and slow the spread of the new coronavirus have severely impacted the national economy, resulting in staggering job losses. The government has responded so far by rolling out a bailout package totaling more than $200 billion. However, in a letter to the Prime Minister on Sunday, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh urged further action to ensure that people who have lost their jobs don't also lose their homes when rent and mortgage payments come due on April 1st. I was out for a walk the other day. I took my kids via car to another trail, and we weren't bothered by anybody, but we crossed a bridge on like a covered bridge, and it was fun. But I saw a poster that said, "Keep your rent," and it said, "Keep your rent from the evil landlords." And the positioning on that I thought was just really interesting, because those evil landlords are letting you live in their house, right? And I mean, like, I understand that I'm on the other side of 40. I'm not a 20-year-old anymore. I'm not renting, especially in this economy with the rent being a lot more expensive than it used to be. I understand all that. So maybe I don't know exactly how it is, but I always was happy to pay my landlords. I was always happy to not help out, but be a good tenant with the expectation that they would be a good landlord. So the positioning of those evil landlords, I mean, I'm sure there are bad landlords out there, absolutely, for sure. There are a certain segment of every population that are terrible, awful people. But by and large, I've run into okay landlords most of the time. So the idea of trying to paint everyone with this, terrible landlord brush is just an interesting further way to divide people, right? Exploiting that division, exploiting that attack angle, right? So anyway, back to this. I just wanted to point that out. Back to this. And while government officials, another 606, they go into the fear of it and the numbers, blah, blah, blah. Anyways. And while government officials in Quebec and BC have said that their indications, social distancing efforts may be paying off in slowing the rampant march of the virus. Listen to that, eh? The rampant march of the virus. How many people got flu this year in Canada? How many people died of the flu this year? How does that compare to this? I could possibly look, but I'm very busy and on a tight schedule, so I'm not going to. But maybe tomorrow I will. But right, the rampant march of the virus. I don't know, man. Back to this. Canada's chief public health officer says it's still too early to make that call. On Sunday, Dr. Theresa Tam said this week will be very, very important for her in terms of looking at those trends. But in the meantime, she again urged Canadians to continue to physically distance themselves from others. And, well, the last little bit. This I thought was really weird. The Financial Post. I'll get into that in just a minute. Here's a news alert from a doctor. It says, news alert, Dr. Vladimir Zelenko, a board-certified family practitioner in New York, has treated 699 COVID-19 patients with 100% success using a combination that Donald Trump proposed and was widely panned for. And I'm not going to say this because I slaughtered the name. Oh, whatever. Hydroxychloroquine? Maybe I'm wrong. Sulfate, zinc, and Z-Pak. All symptoms of shortness of breath resolved within 4 to 6 hours. And not sure why the drastic drop in numbers of total new deaths in the U.S. and New York today, but the total U.S. daily new deaths dropped from 525 yesterday to 254 today. And in New York, the daily new deaths dropped from 277 yesterday to 82 today. So that was 11 hours ago. So presumably, hopefully that trend continues. That would be wonderful. That would be wonderful if we found something that reduced the mortality rate of this. Because then that would mean we could get back to normal and these draconian measures could be repealed, right? Let's worry about parking tickets and not the implosion of our economy, right? Right? Wouldn't that be nice? So the last story is the Financial Post going with the headline, "From nobodies to essential workers, truckers now key to getting goods on empty shelves in the coronavirus crisis." And I think that it's funny because they were always key. Like it was never a question that were truckers key. And the reason they went with the title is right here. So it's the trucker himself who uses the term. So, okay. Indeed, truckers have become a key cog in the supply chain as grocery stores empty out and hospitals and pharmacies have an ever-increasing need for supplies such as soap, sanitizer, masks, ventilators, and basic flu medication. We went from being nobodies to essential workers, said Chad Montgomery, also a driver with Challenger Motor Freight. I've never felt appreciated in my job until now. A lot of people don't realize it takes a truck to get stuff on shelves. If it wasn't for a truck driver, you would have nothing. And so I would have maybe gone with, if it wasn't for a truck driver, you would have nothing, instead of the nobodies to essential workers. But I mean, you do what you do. But that's why they went with the title. So I don't like it. I think that, I mean, truck driving put lots of food on lots of families' tables, right? I mean, and yeah, essential workers is a good way to describe it. So I think that the positioning of this article, again, just further goes to underline the division and the way that's used on our society, right? And it's practiced by everybody, right? Practiced by everybody. This is Global News. This one's the Financial Post, right? They're all doing it. It's everybody. So interesting stuff to watch. I hope this trend continues. Let's get back to a semblance of normal, right? Man, wouldn't that be unbelievable if Donald Trump was able to open up the American economy by Easter? Wouldn't it? Whew. If that trend continues, that's a possibility. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com, check out CanadaReport.co, and have a wonderful, wonderful